everybody, Renzo from Beyond the Longbox here. I know you don't see us on camera too much nowadays, but I want to talk about a new release that I am very excited about. It is Devilman, the classic collection from 7 Seas. Devilman follows high school crybaby Akira Fudo, who is enlisted in a war against demonkind. By fusing with a demon, Akira is granted amazing powers and becomes Devilman, half human, half demon, and all murder machine. This is one of those manga series that was considered for a long time unlicensable for one reason or another. Somehow, 7 Seas worked some kind of Faustian pact or magic in order to bring this manga to the United States. For those of you who may not be familiar with Devilman, it was a manga series from Go Nagai, released in 1972 to 1973 was its original publication run. 7 Seas went for a gorgeous hardcover edition. They include the color pages from the Japanese release. The binding is well done, because sometimes with these large, thick, like sort of omnibus edition manga, sometimes, oh, looks impressive, and then you take, you know, one turn and just the binding cracks. And then you're like, well, now I'm gonna have to read this thing as 2 separate books. It does make the book a little pricier than your average manga. This is at about $33, but it does contain several volumes worth of material in here. This is about half of the Devilman saga, plus a little extra. Devilman originally ran from 1972 to 1973 and had a definitive ending. But later on in 1979, Go Nagai did a spin-off manga called Shin Devilman, which takes place sort of between chapters of the original Devilman manga. And originally that was published as its own sort of standalone volume, but now in Japan it's sort of woven into all releases of the original Devilman series. And I like that 7 Seas took the time to bring this over. I would have liked seeing it released as a separate volume, just because it doesn't really integrate seamlessly with the original Devilman. If you look at the early chapters of Devilman, people are drawn in like this sort of like loose, cartoony style. Akira is more sort of, you know, doe-eyed. Devilman is more lanky and gaunt looking. And then if you look in Shin Devilman, which was done in 1979, Devilman is now like more muscular. Akira looks a little more burly now. He's got some of that sort of shonen hero definition going that he didn't quite have in the early chapters. So it creates a sort of a visual dissonance. I don't consider this a deal breaker at all with the release. I still think it's a fantastic release from 7 Seas manga. You can tell Go Nagai was approaching the story with a sort of intensity. This is a young manga author just really like putting like everything he's got into this story. The characters are drawn in this very almost like kind of cutesy looking art style, but you have these scenes of sort of like very shocking violence and gore going on. It makes those scenes stand out a little bit more. It creates like a stronger shock when you have these aesthetically like sort of clean looking characters like just descend into all this sort of debauched carnage. And coupling that with the fact that around the time the story was being written, you have the Vietnam War going on. So you have for the first time, you know, in television in full color, these images of shocking violence being, you know, beamed into homes throughout the world. Go Nagai is sort of like channeling a bit of that energy into Devilman, which I think is reflected in like the way that the story escalates. Now, technically, this is not the first release of Devilman in English and in the United States, though this is the first complete release. In 1986, Dynamic Productions, Go Nagai's publishing house, released Devilman, the Devil's Incarnation in the United States. Now, keep in mind, this was released in 1986. This is a time when manga was virtually unheard of in the United States. I think Fred Schott's manga was only published a few years earlier. So it wasn't like today. You couldn't go to your local bookstore and find, a gigantic rack of manga. The fact that Go to Guy was sort of more or less attempting to self-publish in the United States was admirable, but it didn't exactly go over very well. It's something of a limited release, and there's virtually no information out there about it getting like any sort of reviews or decent publicity. And also, during the mid-90s, the publishing house Verotic, which was led by Glenn Danzig. Yeah, that Glenn Danzig was releasing Shin Devilman in the United States in the form of regular floppy comics. This also had digitized coloring that was, they tried. I think he just tried to think of like ways to make it feel more appealing to American comic book readers that were looking at things like Spawn. Later on, he created his own sort of hero that was more or less a woman version of Devilman called Satanica. There was actually an attempt on his part to do an anime, and he had a pilot film that was shown at a couple of comic conventions. But the interesting thing is that just a few short years after the release of Satanica, Go to Guy came out with his own Devilman spin-off called Devilman Lady. Yeah, I know, it's not Devil Lady, it's Devilman Lady. I don't know either. Devilman is the sort of manga that, to some readers that are new to it, elements of it may seem cliche, but keep in mind that Devilman was one of the first of its kind. So we now sort of see elements of Devilman throughout manga and anime to this very day. Devilman is at times ugly, brutal, and cynical, but what elevates it beyond just ordinary schlock is Go to Guy's very dynamic storytelling and cartooning style. The guy's fight scenes are a combination of gleeful bloodshed and hyperkinetic action. And when you take that and combine it with these characters that are very larger than life, and the guy's own semi-improvisational approach to storytelling, it turns Devilman into the sort of comic that demands your attention. Go to Guy was crafting the sort of anti-hero story that American publishers wouldn't really take a chance with until much later. I think it's still very much an electrifying, shocking sort of story. So I'm really very excited that this is finally getting a US release. And I gotta say, if you're someone who's maybe not familiar with Devilman, or if you saw the anime and want to learn more about it, maybe if you're more into horror manga, or if you're a little bit into superheroes, I think Devilman kind of has something for everybody. Walk, run, fly, do whatever you gotta do. You gotta pick up this edition of Devilman.
Thank you for watching Beyond the Longbox.
If you enjoyed the show and would like to see more, please hit subscribe, and we'll continue to bring you the best in comics.
Worship me!